Mike Tyson said it best. The magic you're looking for is in the work you won't do. Well, I would submit that your biggest breakthroughs are hiding inside of the moments that you keep avoiding. Because every trigger is either a story we repeat or a doorway that we use to clarity that we've been praying for or trying to achieve. If you are new to the show or a friend just sent you this episode, I am stoked you are here because we are stepping into episode 2 of our Reset in 20 series. This is 7 short episodes designed to help you reset your state, your strategy, and your standards in 20 minutes or less to apply to your life and to your business to crush in the new year. So, hey, I'm back. It's George. And let me ask you a question. How many times in the last week did you get hit with a text, a comment, a client email, and your entire nervous system went sideways? Like you got tightness in your chest, you were afraid to open it, you didn't know what was inside of it, and then you judged yourself for it instead of using it. So welcome back to the Mind of George Show. This is where entrepreneurs discover that true scaling isn't about strategies, hacks, or tactics. It's about aligning your mindset, your message, and your marketing so that you can grow sustainably, feel aligned, and authentic in the process. And in episode 1 of the Reset in 20 series, we talked about burnout and the 4 questions that help you design a business that doesn't destroy you. So if you haven't listened to that episode, pause this one and go listen to the first one, because today we're going straight into the raw, real moments, what those things are that I sometimes call tickles. You might know them as triggers, and the glimmers on the other side of them. And so in this episode, we're going to dive into how to recognize when you're triggered before you burn a bridge or blow up your day, how to reframe what's happening so it becomes a glimmer. And what a glimmer is it's a doorway into growth. It's a piece of clarity that we get to take action on instead of another reason to spiral, and how to actually respond differently so you can get new evidence and new clarity and a new identity and not just new intentions that go on the board. This matters because those tiny, like, I lost it for 10 minutes moments, or I delayed it and put it off till yesterday, are the very places that our next level or our next growth or our next perspective is trying to come to life. And if you don't have a process, the default wins. In the military, we used to say, you don't fall to your level of preparation, you fall to your level of training. And when you have this process and you follow this, your future self wins. And so by the end of this episode, you will have a simple 3-step model that you can use in real time the next time you get hit. Whether it's a message, a client, a bad call, something falls flat on his face, so that those triggers don't overwhelm you, but they become training and not proof that we're broken. And if you are in this series, this is number 2. And if this reset hits home, if this helps you, my invitation is for you to share it with one friend and commit to finishing all 7 episodes in the Reset for 20 series. And so without further ado, let's dive into episode 2. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. Happy New Year. And with the new show structure and typical fashion, let's get right into the meat. So today, we're going to be talking about triggers versus glimmers, but also like a 3-step process that comes from NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically a way to utilize a process to help recondition your behaviors and responses to be all aligned to your success. Like, I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to break this down. So recognizing that we're responsible for our success, and it's our behaviors and our patterns that dictate it, and most of them are subconscious, right? When we think about, manifestation or creation or clarity or future self journaling or all these different things, really what we're talking about is designing our environment or putting tools or workouts in place so that when we're met with a situation that might be overwhelming or cause emotions or a lack of clarity, that we can react or respond differently. We can respond differently versus react, and how to do that. And so the 3-step process is recognize, reframe, and respond. And so I'm going to be breaking this down and talking about this, especially in the lens of like triggers and glimmers. And so with that, I'm just kind of really, really excited because I know I'm going to talk about environmental design today. And tomorrow we're doing our first call of this year to kick off the new year with the Alliance, which is the Relationship Speed Algorithms Alliance. And it's all on environmental design, your internal environment, your external, and your digital environment, and utilizing that and designing that for your success, right? And so in that lens, that environment is about glimmers, right? And so in the lens of triggers and glimmers, what's a trigger? We all kind of know that word. For me, I would kind of define a trigger as anything that happens that causes emotional reaction in my body or in my mind, or a lack of clarity that makes me doubt, have fear, shame, fault, blame, sadness, anything along those lines that triggers my default state out of possibility, focus, momentum, not necessarily happiness, but clarity, right? That's what I would call a trigger, right? We see these, we understand these, we recognize these. And in a true medicine in my own medicine cabinet way, triggers are where the growth and magic happens. So one of the things that I say that I took from Mike Tyson, he says the magic you're looking for is in the work you won't do. And I added a part to it for myself, and I wrote it in my journal, and I said the magic I'm looking for is in the work I won't do and the feelings I won't feel, right? And so when I look at triggers, every time I've had an overwhelming trigger of something that's caused an emotion or a reaction, and I've been able to walk into it with clarity and respond versus react, my biggest breakthroughs have always been on the other side of those. And that's been a muscle that I've had to learn to flex. And so that's what a trigger is. So what is a glimmer? Well, a glimmer is the opposite of triggers. It's small rays of peace, sunshine, and happiness, right? Things that remind us of our vision, remind us of our clarity, anchor in positive memories, serendipitous moments that happen, things that pop up in front of us that make us feel happy and joy, right? And why is this so important? Well, at the end of the day, when we think about our life, when we think about our business at a very high level, we are the only ones in the driver's seat, right? We are 100% in control. And if we're in that driver's seat and we aren't careful or intentional, triggers and all that noise can overwhelm us drastically. And it feels like we're drowning, we're overwhelmed, and we think we're driving, but we're actually not. We're in the passenger seat, and our reactions and our emotions are driving, and it creates this massive amount of pain. But at the end of the day, we are still the ones that have to grab the wheel again. And most of the time, that comes down to having glimmers around us and having things, systems, tools, processes, or support in place that when we're in those moments, we can process those feelings, process those emotions, and then remember that clarity, remember what we're focused on, remember what we're creating, and then utilize those glimmers, for lack of better terms, to remember and remind to get back in the game, and then collect new evidence that we're in process and in momentum. And that's where motivation comes from, right? And so any time where we're not driving the wheel from a place of like, yep, I'm happy, I'm here, that's a dangerous game. And so we have to kind of self-assess. And so this is important because triggers are, our job with a trigger, for lack of better terms, is to rewire them into a glimmer. And that, in my opinion, is the root of what all personal development, cognitive behavioral therapy, future self-journaling, and all the work that we work on to become these versions of ourselves to run these businesses, right? It's recognizing that these triggers are our path to growth, and we just get to rewire them. And so this incredible woman, and I want to find her name really quickly, which is why I'm leaning into my iPad so close. Barbara Hussin. So her book is called Rewire for Wealth, right? And this is derived from NLP, but she talks about her 3-step process that she utilizes to rewire a trigger into a glimmer. And when I think about integration, what integration is understanding that we get these triggers, we use this 3-step process, which is recognize, reframe, and respond differently. But when we choose that new behavior on how we're going to respond in the future, it doesn't mean the trigger is going to go away. It means that the next time the trigger happens, we have a plan in place to attempt a different behavior. And it's our consistency in doing that over and over that actually reframes or rewires that trigger into a glimmer. And it is 100% behavioral, which is why I'm so bullish on your wedge of expectations and your SOS, because you can protect your rewire and you can protect your growth by putting those plans into place and utilizing this 3-step model. So what is the 3-step model? Recognize, reframe, and respond differently. And the respond differently is reframed as take positive action, right? So what is the recognize? The recognize is giving the trigger space in your brain, noticing it, and then recognizing that it is simply a thought, right? So you hear me be really bullish with our SOS about when you get triggered, go to an inner tool and create space, right? And so this is what I'm talking about. It's understanding that when we get triggered, our biggest breakthrough is to actually pause and do nothing, because that prevents us from reacting emotionally and allowing a temporary feeling to create a permanent undesirable result. So recognize it's just finding the space to pause. It doesn't mean you're going to find a solution. It doesn't mean you're going to find clarity. It means you're going to use your SOS to pause. And trust me, if you want this, and I did this on my birthday, I recorded a call on my birthday because I just wanted to help, where I break this down and help you put the wedge and SOS into place in a 1-hour call. And so it is free, no email. It is just a replay. It talks about how to do this. So if you want that, just shoot us a DM on Instagram that says birthday replay, and we will respond and send it right to you. I promise I will give it to you. I would love for you to have that, right? And so with recognize and with your SOS, what you're doing is when you get triggered, instead of allowing a reaction, which would be an old pattern of behavior, it's a pause. And then in that pause, you're creating space to recognize and notice that, yes, it's triggered, but it's actually just a thought. It's something happening in your brain, and it might be real, and the emotion is real, but in that moment, it's not all happening. So we have to pause so we can get clarity, and for lack of better terms, pull our ripcord so we can see the situation differently. So then the second part is reframe. And so reframing is the process of inversing the thought from negative to positive. So an example would be, I can never close a new lead into a sale, and you would reframe it into, I have and can close a new lead into a sale, or I'm closing 3 leads a day into sales. And I used to make fun of this, and I used to think this was silly. And that was after I became a personal development teacher. And I realized that most of the pain in my life came from making it silly and thinking that knowledge was power. No, skill is power. And that's when we take that knowledge and the workouts in front of us, like this one, and we put it into practice until it becomes who we are. And that is how I lost 80 pounds and have alignment in my life and the happiest I've ever been. And with Lindsay and I navigating our divorce, but also being the bestest of friends that we've ever been and the closest, has come down to putting this into practice, actually doing the workouts. And the reframe is a big part of that. And that is the actual flexing of the muscle that rewires this from a trigger into a glimmer, but you have to put the workout in. And so it's funny because you'll hear us do this. You'll see speakers do this, personal development coaches. You'll hear it. We're like, well, I do this where I'll say something negative out loud. And I'm like, cancel, cancel. And then I'll say it again. And it's rewiring a trigger into a glimmer. And so that's the reframe. And so whether you say it out loud, you write it on stickies, you pick the modality that works for you. And then the third step is respond differently. And so that is the state of being. That is the actual action that makes the trigger start to be rewired into the glimmer. That's what we call integration, where you recognize a different behavior. So you do something positive to make that true. And so thinking about a future outcome or a positive reframe in the lens of reframing it into, I have and can close new leads into sales, the behavior would be, if you're afraid to do it, it might be, I'm going to book 2 sales calls in practice. I'm going to do blank. And you put a state of being or an action in place, and then you act on that action. But that plan, that workout also becomes your new prescription for when you get triggered like that again. Our dear friend Brian Bogert calls it trigger mapping. But that means that in a day or in 3 days, if you're sitting there again and you have that thought that says, I can never close a new lead into a sale, you have to institute the same workout. You have to pause, create space. You then, that's recognizing it, have to reframe it again. If it's the same one, you already have the new behavior, and then you take action on that behavior, practicing and integrating until it becomes a part of your day. And when we say trust the process, I mean genuinely trust this process, because the more you go through that process, you can seek more glimmers and you're going to find them, but you're going to be able to convert your triggers into glimmers. And that's what's actually helping us grow. That's what's helping us solve challenges that are arising in front of us that we haven't learned before. We weren't born entrepreneurs. We weren't born with all the answers, and we weren't taught how to navigate it. So triggers are actually our body's way of being like, I don't know the answer. I don't know how to get through this, but we're the ones that are responsible too. So if we can pause, recognize, reframe, and then respond differently, we can start to behave differently to bring different clarity, which will help us learn and integrate those things, but we have to trust the process. And so our jobs are to follow those paths. But if anything pops up in our life or in our ecosystem that causes an emotional reaction, that when we look in the mirror can self-admittedly say we lost control, or it was a self-sabotaging behavior, or I avoided things that I knew would make it better or different, we have to pause, hit this 3-step model, and get back into the field. And so I'm really excited about this because this is the actual work. This is what makes it work. This is how you keep progressing and you make it work until it does, right? And when we tell everybody like it's focusing on one thing or one offer, this is how you keep integrating that thing until it works. And then you scale beyond that point. But you have to be willing to put the work in, put the workouts in, and get into practice and protect yourself on the field. And so this is what I wanted to talk about today. I think it's a perfect way at the beginning of the year. It's something I'm working on actively, and I just picked up a brand new journal, whipped out my future self journaling prompts last night, and started going through this and started rewiring and reframing some things that are actively present for me. And so I want to help with this. I want to support you in this, but I promise you, if you just pause, you take the time to put this into practice, it can only be beneficial. And so if you want that birthday replay, just shoot us a DM on Instagram. You know my Instagram, it's George Bryant. If you happen to find this podcast today because somebody sent it to you, first, thank you for sending it to your friends. If you haven't, please do. If you know somebody that can be helpful for, you always ask me like, George, how can we support? How can we support? I'm not going to run ads on this show. Can you just please spread the word so more people can find this magic and we can help more people? But if you don't know who I am, just go to the channel trailer on Spotify or YouTube. It will explain all of it. Only subscribe if it's worth it. But shoot me a DM on Instagram. My Instagram is George Bryant with the word birthday replay. And we will send you a replay of everything that I talked about on this call and how to fix it. And if you're just ready to skip the line and come into the alliance and you know me and you've been around, it is what I used to run as like my mastermind, but it's not a mastermind, it's an alliance. We're doing it for $100 a month where we give you all these models, help you with the clarity. We have it mapped out so when you come in at your pace, you can design your clarity, put it in your perfect calendar for the year, build the habits and behaviors to get there, and then have literally a team and 100 of us supporting you in getting there and helping you navigate that process. So if you just want to skip the line and come in, shoot us a DM on Instagram that says Alliance, and we will send you the invitation because I would love to have you. And so that is what I got for today. I'm going to go jump. I love you. I appreciate you. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. And if you haven't subscribed to the show, please subscribe to the show. And if you're not on Spotify, I highly recommend you move to Spotify and get subscribed over there. We're going to be doing some bonuses over there. And Spotify is really growing as a podcast platform. So it'll allow us to do some things in the future, like have you submit questions and answers. And so I love you. Have a good day. I will see you in the next episode.